Today's guest is someone I'm very excited to introduce, Howard Behar. Howard is someone who worked with Starbucks for over 20 years. He was one of the key leaders through its hyper-growth period. He's a board member, he's an author, obviously retired from Starbucks. Two of his books got my attention. It's Not About the Coffee and The Magic Cup, but actually his work on servant leadership is actually what drew us together. He is a servant leader himself and passionate about teaching the concepts of servant leadership. So I just couldn't wait to talk to you, Howard. For a couple of years, I've been following you.
I found you again. For some reason, it showed up and then it disappeared, but we got together.
We got together, and as I just realized, this was not planned, but I am drinking from the Starbucks cup this morning, some Starbucks coffee. So yeah. We're in good shape. So thank you for joining me today, Howard. We're going to jump right into some concepts on servant leadership, since you're all caffeinated like I am. I suppose we're ready. So we think about servant leadership. It's the theme of the Magic Cup, I think Vince steadfast, but putting people first, putting values first over everything else. Tell us a little bit about why you're so passionate about servant leadership and how you really adopted that as your leadership philosophy.
Well, when I was a very young man, I was in my early 20s. I was working for a mid-20s. I was working for somebody that gave me a little booklet called The Servant as Leader, written by a man named Robert Greenleaf, who coined the term servant leadership. And I started reading that book, and after reading it a few times and then doing a little more research on Robert Greenleaf and what he thought about servant leadership, it just tweaked my interest, because I had never had words to put with the things that I felt and how I was trying to act. And so Robert Greenleaf's work gave me words that helped me define who I wanted to be in a more formal sense. And so that process started almost 50 years ago, and I've been at it ever since. And it just made sense to me. It was kind of how I wanted to be treated as a human being. And so when I was reading this work and trying to be a better leader, it said, I think this is the way that leaders should lead. And I've been at it ever since. I learn every day about it.
Well, of course, I'm familiar with that piece, and his work is extraordinary. It's groundbreaking. He did coin it. And it's so important. As leaders, though, sometimes we may want to adopt a philosophy, but replicating that philosophy is sometimes hard. How do you, as a leader, instill that servant leadership practice to other leaders in the company so that it's pervasive?
Well, first of all, you just have to live it. It has to be who you are, and it has to be consistent and ongoing. And then you have to talk about it. You have to talk about what it means and why you think it's important and why you think that our organization should be led that way. And we did lots of that at the companies that I've been at before, but at Starbucks we really put it to work. And I came with it. And Starbucks was a very small company. It was only 28 stores when I joined. And I just started right from the beginning saying we want to be a servant-led company. And fortunately, Howard Schultz and Orin Smith agreed, and they didn't use those words when I first met them, but I brought that language and the vocabulary to Starbucks, and we just drove it. It became who we were. It wasn't a program of the day. It became who we were as human beings, because that's what it has to be. You can't just take it off the shelf and say, give it to your people and say, read this, and then do it. You have to do it yourself first, and you have to hold other people accountable for doing it. And it's just an ongoing process, and it takes lots of time to integrate it into your organization, to get people to really understand it. And then what happens, you bring new people in the organization that don't understand or don't get it, and you have to have the patience to bring them along. Or you have to have the ability, when they can't come along, you have to be able to say, we love you, but you just don't fit here.
Yeah, I think that's important and sometimes hard. I'm wondering if you've experienced this. I've seen some people who adopt the servant leadership mentality. I want to serve you. I want to do my best for you. And those same people sometimes, I've noticed, have a difficult time holding people accountable because they so want to serve and so want to make you work and so want to make everything happy that they take the burden on themselves. Have you seen that too, that struggle?
Absolutely. It happens all the time. We had that issue at Starbucks. Servant leadership is not about, I mean, it's about accountability too. It's not, and it's about performance. It isn't about being nice, right?
So
That's
true.
the last thing it is, right?
So true.
It's about holding yourself accountable, about treating people with respect and dignity, about understanding that your role as a leader is to serve your people in the journey of them helping them accomplish their goals while they help the organization accomplish its goals. But it's a two-way street, and it has to be two-way street. And so it's not we absolutely hold people accountable, not only for being a servant leader, but for performance, whatever that performance it means in your organization. And that's what servant leadership is all about. You know, and Greenleaf in the pamphlet, The Servant as Leader, that's one of the things he talks about is climbing the mountain. Remember the journey that they were on?
That's right.
Well, they had to get to the mountain, but he was there to serve them to climbing the mountain. They had a goal, climb the mountain, right? But they had to achieve the goal, but they had to do it in a way that put people up, not put people down.
And we still have to do the work and climb the mountain.
Yes. The mountain's got to be climbed, you know.
Kindness does not mean that we're not moving forward and up that mountain. And if you don't want to come, then there's a different journey for you.
That you're not direct and that you don't hold people accountable. Kindness means sometimes really serious conversations.
I find that so often missed, and so I'm glad you articulate that.
Because people fall into the trap, I'm supposed to be nice. Yeah, you're supposed to be nice, but you're also supposed to be demanding, and you're supposed to expect results, and you're supposed to communicate about both.
Well said. I also think about that mountain. I think about it in a different way, which is the vision of where we're going. And great leaders paint that vision, and I think Starbucks did such a great job of painting the vision of something bigger than just profits or themselves. How do you get other people throughout the organization to embrace some idea or something bigger than what they might expect?
Well, first of all, you have to really define the purpose of the organization. And the purpose of any organization, it has to be bigger than the organization itself. And then you have to talk about it. And you have to encourage your people to attach to that greater purpose and to live by the values of the organization. And that's really the driving force. And then you hold each other accountable to that purpose and what it all means. And it's not just, it can't be something that's just sitting up in thin air. You know, it's got to be written down. You got to talk about it a lot. You know, how many companies have mission statements that sit on the wall and they never look at it after they wrote it? A mission statement and a guiding principles, they're alive. And so that means you have to be talking about them all the time, holding each other accountable to them, and have the mechanisms to do that. But, you know, you have to just stay with it. I used to say that I've given the same speech 10,000 times, you know, that we're about people and that we're about performance and we're about coffee, but in that order. You know, it's people first, performance second, coffee third. And that's what we stayed with. And I don't care where we went in the world, that's what we did and that's what we talked about. And that's what we held each other accountable to.
Well, Howard, I agree, as you know, so strongly with your principles. I do disagree with the order depending on the time of day. Coffee is number one for me when I first wake up, but I'm with you the rest of the day. It's not about the coffee. You share so many principles in that book. I love it. And one of them is know who you are, wear one hat. I'd love for you just to tell our audience a little bit about what that is. Wear one hat. What does that mean?
One hat, you know, if I say to my wife, well, wear one hat, and she says, that's easy for you to say, but I do this, I got to do this. You're not here that's not the hat I'm talking about. I'm talking about the hat that you wear that defines who you are as a human being. What are your values? How do those values inform your decisions and your actions in life? And, you know, and you have to be thoughtful about that. You have to write them down. I remember the first exercise I went through where somebody told me that, you need to be thoughtful about your life and you need to really understand what your values are. I never really thought about it. I was just Howard being Howard until I started that journey and really trying to define my values until I got down to 8 core values. And those 8 core values inform my life. Well, the one hat is representative of those values. It's how you live to those values. So, the best way I can explain it is this. So you have a hat you put on and you wear it hopefully throughout all your day. You wear it in your significant other, with your significant other, your wife, husband, whatever it happens to be. You wear it at work, you wear it with your parents, you wear it in your spiritual life, you wear it with the rest of your family, you wear it in your community, and wherever you are, that hat is on your head. And everybody knows what that hat means. And you really know what that hat means. So you wake up in the morning, you look across the bed, and if you have to change your hat, you better really evaluate whether you're in the right relationship or not. And, you think about, so your hat represents, one of the values in your hat is honesty. Well, if you're living with somebody that shoplifts every day because they like to have nice things, no matter how much you may love that person, that's in a direct conflict with one of your values. So you better decide, are you going to take your hat off to live with this person, or are you going to say, I can't live with this? Or if you go to work and your boss, you go to Starbucks, you open the front door and your boss says, those numbers you turned on the other day, can you just adjust this one a little bit here? Because we almost made it, and it won't hurt anybody if you make this a 7 instead of a 6. But it's dishonest. So now you have to decide, do I do that or not? And so all the way through your life, whatever your values are, if you want to have a fulfilling life, and when I mean fulfilling, I mean happiness, joy, sadness, disappointment, all the things that go to make up a whole life, a fulfilling life, then you got to be able to wear your hat throughout your whole life, no matter where you go. And if your hat is in conflict with the values of your organization that you're in, then you better evaluate it whether you're with the right organization or not.
You've got to leave. It's so profound. It's simple and profound. And I wonder how many problems happen as a direct result of changing that hat. I think causes all kinds of dysfunction in people's lives and organizations. So
absolutely. I give a lot of speeches to young college students, that are in, graduating MBAs, and we talk about what their hat is. And then then they say, well, I've got to get a job, so I just got to take something that comes up. I said, no, you don't. You're not a victim here. You better really understand what the values of the organization you're thinking about going to work with, and understand whether they fit with yours. And if they don't, you better really be thoughtful about what it is you can deal with here. And most people I find are unhappy because, not because they don't necessarily like their work, they're unhappy because they can't align with the greater purpose of the organization, and they're not aligned with the values of the organization, and the organization's not aligned with theirs.
So very true. Let's turn to a completely different principle from that same book, and it's a quote that people, I see it often from you, and it's something to the effect of the person who sweeps the floor should choose the broom. And I've seen you talk about this. And this concept of empowerment, that really puts it in such clear terms. I think that's probably why the quote resonates so much, because usually we talk about employee empowerment, but what does that mean? That really hits it home. Talk a little bit about that one.
As long as you do it the way I want you to do it, you're empowered.
Yeah, that's right. That's not good.
Yeah, that's not good. So, in my early days, I always wanted to be able to vote. And that's where the quote started from. It said, I want to be able to vote on my areas of expertise. I wanted to have some responsibility and accountability. It wasn't so much authority, but responsibility and accountability for my performance and the performance of my team. And so when I got to Starbucks, I started to think, how do I get people to understand it? And, we, of course, had floor sweepers, people that clean floors, and my point was, who better knows what broom to choose in terms of what it takes to sweep a floor than the person who's doing the work? And so I was trying to get across, look, we hire these great people to come into our organization, And then we tell them everything that they're not supposed to do.
Right.
And then if they come to us with an idea, we roll our eyes and we say, can't you see I'm busy, But, if you really want to get the most out of your people, tell them what their job is, tell them what the purpose of their job is, why it's important to the organization, what the goals should be, at least at this point in time, if they're, they'll begin to set their own goals after a little bit of time, but what their goals should be. And then encourage them to get the tools or to do the things that they need to do to figure out what broom to choose or what computer to choose or whatever it is to do their job. And, companies strangle people, right? We basically take all the wind out of their sails as soon as somebody comes and says, well, I'd like to buy this broom. And then you say to them, well, the purchasing department says this broom is the only one you can really buy. The one you want may be all right, but you can't do that. And that kills innovation. And it's what stars companies, and it goes on all the time.
I'm fascinated. You talk about this empowerment and even choosing the broom, and I'm thinking about this great brand, Starbucks, that you helped build and expand so much around the world. And making coffee is part art, part science. I'm sure. I'm not an expert, but I'm an expert in terms of drinking it, and what I'm wondering is the empowerment and letting people choose, and yet you have such an I know you're retired from Starbucks, but there's such an exact science. There's a methodology that every single store follows precisely. I'm amazed by it. Wherever I go around the world, I can be in China, I can be in Europe, Africa. It is exactly, perfectly what I want to have the same cup of coffee. How do you balance the need for precision and corporate standards and brand global kind of representation with the ability to empower, or when do you allow that to happen?
Well, let's take an example, probably the best example. We had a district manager in Southern California. Her name was Dina Campion. And Dina had a responsibility for about 10 stores. And one day she called me to come down and visit her. And of course, I love to be in the field. That's the best place. So I went to visit her, and we went on a tour of some of our stores and some of our competitor stores. And one of the competitor stores, she bought me a drink. And she said, we have customers coming in every day wanting a drink like this. And I said, really? How many do you think we could sell? She says, oh, probably about 30 a day. And so I talked to her, and I said, that's a great idea, Dina. Let me take it back to Seattle. And I took the idea back to Seattle, and I presented it to the people that were responsible, the head of marketing and product development, and there was not one single vote in favor of this. As a matter of fact, the head of marketing, who was in charge of product development, says, that's not the business we're in. Okay? And so remember, Dina and her broom. So Dina had a responsibility. Her goals were to grow the business, to have great people in the company, treat her customers well, among many things. So she was just trying to serve her customers and to grow the business. So it was a rejection of her idea of Dina's broom. So I called her up and said, Dina, you're going to be disappointed, but no, there's nobody wants to do this right now. And I said, let's give it a few months and we'll come back at it. So about 4 weeks later, she called me up on the phone. She said, Dina, can you come visit, or Howard, can you come visit me again? And I said, Dina, what is it that you want? She says, I want to talk a little bit more about the drink. I said, Dina, you know what the answer is. Just leave it alone for a while. And she says, Howard, please come down. I said, well, Dina, I'm not going to make a special trip, but I have to be down there in 3 weeks, and I'll stop by and see you in one of your stores. So I did. I stopped by the 3rd Street Promenade store in Santa Monica, California. And she says, go sit down at one of the tables. I did. And she brought me 3 little sample cups. And I looked at it, I said, Dina, these taste remarkably like that drink you bought me. Are you trying to get me fired? Remember we told you that we couldn't go ahead with this? She said, Howard, she looked with these big brown Italian eyes, and she said, Howard, please let me touch. Please let us try this. Nadina is one of those kind of people, like a little dog with really sharp teeth, and once they sink their teeth into your calf, no matter what you do to shake them off, they don't shake off. Well, that's Dina. So, it's one of those times in my leadership career and everybody has them, where you have to make a decision, maybe sometimes to go against the norm. So, Dina knew more about what was going on in her business than anybody else did. She knew that we were losing customers every day because we didn't have a product like this. So, Dina knew more about what kind of broom to choose than we did. So I said, okay, Dina, you can try it, but don't tell a soul what you're doing. She had bought the equipment, all the stuff she needed to make this product. So I said, you call me every night with the results. Now remember, she told me 30 drinks a day. First week, she had not only 30 drinks a day, but about 40 drinks a day per store. Second week, about 50 drinks a day per store. Third week, about 70 drinks a day per store. This was going to lift our business by 10 to 15%, and the profits even more, because it had a lot of ice in this drink, So anyway, Dina and her broom. So I invited Dina up to Seattle to present again. I was thinking, Howard, you're a genius. Allowed Dina to do this, but I invited her up, and she came up with her people and brought her product up with her. And I had called another meeting, and everybody was sitting around the room, and she brought the sample cups in. Well, the guy that was the head of marketing no sooner took a sip than he got up out of his chair, and Howard Schultz was there at the time, but he pointed at me. He said, Behar, I thought I told you we weren't going to do this. I'm in charge of product development. You're not. Well, I had this sheet of paper that had all the results on it, what it was going to do to lift the business. And I looked at Howard Schultz. I said, give me 90 days. In 90 days, if you don't even like the smell of it, we'll get rid of it. But, I knew nothing ever goes away in retail if it's working. So Dina and her broom. So what do you think Dina's broom was? What broom did she choose? What was the product?
Whatever the unique coffee was.
It was Frappuccino.
Frappuccino.
Something that we didn't sell.
Frappuccino.
Yeah. What do you think the global sales are?
I was thinking it would be some niche kind of thing.
Yeah. The global sales for Frappuccino are around $4 billion today.
Unbelievable.
Both bottled and fresh in the stores. I mean, so I could have easily said to Dina,
follow the rules.
It's the damn broom I gave you. Wow. Don't create new drinks. We'll create the new drinks.
That goes on time after,
and that's what I'm talking about here. I'm not pleading for anarchy here. You have to have some kind of, sieve to put these things through. You can't just do everything all the time. But, sometimes you got to step up. I had very few rules in leading people. Don't do anything illegal. Don't do anything moral. Don't do anything unethical. And sure as hell, don't poison anybody. If you can live with those, we're willing to try things. But all too often you reject somebody's idea because they're new to the company, or because, you just out of hand. You just say, I don't want to be bothered.
That is an amazing story. I was really thinking it'd be some niche kind of drink in California. I had no idea you would say Frappuccino. Well, I just want to have one last question, because servant leadership and your personality is very clear. Humility, and you've had this tremendous success, and yet you're humble. How do leaders stay humble in the middle of wild success?
Well, how do they stay humble? I think you practice humility, right? I don't think humility is always there, and sometimes I have this board of directors that sits on my shoulders, and they're talking to me all the time. And one of them is not humble. One of them is when I give a speech and I get a standing ovation, and one of them says, hey, Howard, you're fantastic. But I have another one that is a much stronger voice, and it's always saying to me, Howard, you're not that good. You're here to contribute like everybody else is. Keep your hat on. Don't get carried away. And so I practice humility. It comes natural to me at some levels. I grew up in a humble beginnings, and a father that had a small mom and pop grocery store, and he was about serving people, and that's where I learned it from. But it's just you got to practice it. You got to remind yourself about who you are and who you're not. And remember, at the end of the day, there's only one reason any of us exist in this world, and that's to serve others. I don't care what you do. You're a widget maker that makes widgets that go into a printing press, that gets sold to a publishing company, that who produces a newspaper or a magazine that gets delivered to somebody's home to inform or entertain them. That lowly, humble, that widget maker serves people, all the way up to being a doctor or a lawyer or serving coffee. It's always about serving people. And if you remember that you're here to serve people, it helps you remain humble.
I do like how you said doctor, lawyer, or serving coffee at the
Yeah,
top. It's
right.
it's
Well,
the highest calling.
that's the highest calling.
Well, Howard, thank you so much. I think everyone can see why I wanted to talk to you for so long. Two great books, a record of success and leadership, and this willingness to, in retirement, give back and share your principles is something that is so appreciated. So thank you so much for sharing these principles of servant leadership with us. And I look forward to, at some point, sharing a cup of coffee with you in person.
I'll look
And
forward.
I continue to follow you and share your work as well. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity.